And so if they really understand the science behind the cooking and they understand the methods of cooking, they can open up their cupboards and the refrigerator and be able to create their own things.
Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Beam and Danny Hogger as they explore the why of teaching.
And welcome to another edition of Inspiring Teachers. I'm Danny Hogger on a great day here in California and connecting to another outstanding educator. We're going back to back in Oregon today. We just talked to John Spencer, who's an amazing professor from middle school, and we continue on with Make Learning Magical now with Tisha Richmond, the speaker and culinary teacher and tech integration specialist from Medford. How are you today, Tisha?
Hello. I'm fantastic. How are you?
Doing great. Enjoyed that refreshing New Year's break and have been talking to amazing teachers around the country, which is always great. And one of the things that stood out to me about you when I was following some of your social media and reading your blog, and you're on Twitter at Tish Rich, and reading your blog at tisharrichmond.com, I really like a story you told recently about unleashing curiosity and how we can get overwhelmed by what we don't know. This is my first year teaching high school after 4 years of middle. So from here to the end of the school year, I've never taught any of this material before in U.S. history, and I've not taught government before. And with history, there's so many side adventures that you could go on, so much knowledge to have, and it's really never over, right? You can really never be a master of history. So I wonder kind of, what is that feeling for you, and how is that something that you approach when you're getting ready for a class? Because there is so much knowledge out there. What do you use to feel motivated when you're getting ready for a lesson?
Yeah, so, it is really, I think wonder and curiosity is such an important element in the classroom. And I think so often we tend to feed kids information, right? And we give it to them, or maybe we ask them, but we don't give them long enough to really delve into the answers on their own or come up with their own questions. And it's definitely not something that I have mastered. As a teacher, I continued to try to find ways to bring curiosity into my class, but I think it's really, really important, especially for our 21st century learners, that we allow them to be curious. And, I think about my niece, who is 7 now, but she has always been so curious. And that's kind of a natural thing with young kids. They are so curious and they ask you a million questions. And I think sometimes as educators, we don't spend enough time allowing students to ask questions in the classroom because maybe we're fearful we don't know all the answers,
Sure.
And I think that is something that we all can fall into. And I know that I have been guilty of that too. But really trying to create opportunities in the class where students can delve deeper into issues and we can open things up for discussion. And as a teacher, not to feel like you have to have all the answers. Let kids explore, let them find the answers on their own, and be honest. If you don't know the answer, say, you know what, I don't know, but let's dive deeper. Let's figure this out. And so I think that that's a really important element. And then also, I always love to bring in just a sense of wonder and mystery into what I do. Sometimes that is maybe having a scavenger hunt at the beginning of a lesson, or maybe in my culinary class, having a mystery day where they didn't know what the recipe it was that we were doing. I would give them a recipe without a title, and part of their challenge would be making the recipe, but having to figure out what it is by the end of the period. And that was kind of the extra part of their lesson. And so just by doing those simple things, it's amazing how much more immersed students are when you really tap into that sense of wonder in our students. It's pretty powerful.
It really, really is. I love everything that you just said. Before we left for break, knowing that I was going to encounter a semester where I haven't seen everything that there is in the material yet, I had them all stick Post-its on the wall. What do you want to learn about World War II? What do you want to learn about government? And that way, no matter what we do first day back, I'll make sure that all those 100 questions are answered, and we'll have all this extra learning that takes place on the alongside. And I love when they ask questions that I don't know the answer to, because I get to be honest with them. And I get to say, hey, well, in my 4 years of teaching, I've had to try to teach everything from early man to modern US history. And if you don't think I have blind spots, you're wrong. I mean, there's so
Exactly.
many things. And if we can learn together, I feel like then it's not a classroom where you learn and I'm going to give you everything I have and you better retain it. It's, hey, let's explore this together. Let's all get smarter and enjoy the journey together. I love that part of it. And I love what you said about the culinary recipe without knowing the title, because that's just such a cool way to kind of explore and have fun. For me, in my classroom, if we're not having fun, why are we here? We can explore all this
Exactly.
together and enjoy our time together. That's such a great sentiment. So I've been reading more about you and your philosophy, and it's
Mhm.
outstanding. I encourage people to go check out your blog and follow you on Twitter.
Thank you.
But what's your journey into education? How did you come into teaching?
So, well, my journey began 22 years ago. So I went to school to be a family and consumer science teacher, which is really broad. So when you're just talking about how, you have all of this content to cover, and you have so much to learn or so much to teach your kids, that's how I felt with family and consumer science. I mean, I had a major that covered child development, interior design, fashion design, culinary arts. I mean, it was a huge, huge area. And really, culinary was not the focus that I had
Mm-hmm.
in my schooling. And so it just happened that I fell into culinary the very first student teaching experience that I had, and then my first teaching job in California. And so I ended up in the culinary classroom for 22 years. My last 13 years was at one high school called South Medford High School in Medford, Oregon. But, it was about 4 or 5 years ago that I was really done. I really thought that I was going to leave education. I would come home at night and I would just tell my husband, I'm so burnt out. I just would love to be a barista. Like, that sounds amazing. I want to perfect the art of making the perfect latte. Like, that just sounded like so much easier and something that I could really like put all my energy into this, this art. And um, something happened that year. There was kind of a catalyst that occurred, and that was the culinary teachers in our region were all putting together a proposal for a grant for a classroom set of iPads.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I wasn't super excited about it, because I'm like, you know what? I don't know what to do with iPads in my classroom. I have one that I use for my own personal use, but I don't know what that means for learning.
Sure.
But I went along with it, and I'm always, jump straight in. And so I'm like, okay, well, we received the grant, and I received a separate grant for iPads through CenturyLink. And so here I was, one-to-one iPads in my classroom. And I knew that I needed professional development, but I had no idea. I really had no idea how these were going to be used to transform learning. But I wanted it to be more than just a tool for researching recipes. I wanted it to make a difference in what I was doing, because it was a huge investment that they were
Sure.
making.
Right.
And so that launched me into looking for professional development. And I went to iPad Palooza, which was a EdTech conference in Austin, Texas. And I went and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many amazing things that people are doing right now in education, not just tech related, but just innovative ideas to reach the 21st century learner. And people were getting connected on Twitter. And I was like, what have I been missing out on? I've been living in this culinary silo, completely isolated, not thinking that anybody could relate to me, because who can relate to a teacher that hands chef's knives to their kids? I mean, I was feeling like I was alone, but here there's this world out there that I hadn't ever realized was there. And so from that conference, it kind of sparked this excitement again. And I started realizing, okay, like, I want to start doing things differently. I want to start bringing more joy and passion into my classroom. And so the more that I started to take risks, and I started to try new things, and I began to become connected as an educator, the more that spark grew, and the more that I got excited about teaching and learning, and the more that joy and passion entered my classroom. And I think part of it is just what we were speaking about before, is that I didn't have to know all the answers. I used to be a teacher that felt I had to have everything tied in this beautiful Nordstrom bow before I presented it to my students.
Right.
And it was suffocating, because what would happen is I never had everything ready and never had anything tied in a bow. So nothing ever changed. I just kind of remained status quo. And in the process, I became stagnant, and I became bored, and I became overwhelmed in teaching. And so really starting to realize, you know what, I can try new things in my classroom, and I can learn along with my kids, and I can have more fun. I had this sign that was by my door, and it said, "Above all, have a good time." It was a Julia Child's quote. And I remember one day I looked at that sign, and I'm like, I'm not having a good time. Here I am in this classroom with this sign that every kid is looking at as they enter my classroom. And yet here I am not having a good time myself. Something's wrong here. And so I became very intentional about making learning fun, making learning magical. And sometimes that involves tech, sometimes it doesn't. But how can we bring joy and passion into teaching and learning? Because if our students aren't having a good time learning, why are they ever going to want to leave our classrooms and continue to learn, right? The
Right.
content
Oh,
that we're teaching.
absolutely. Yeah, so much.
And
That's great. Super inspiring. I love that last 2 minutes is kind of the reasoning behind the show as well. When we first started and we talked to Michelle Foray, she was our first online guest from Maryland. She lit us up. We both left that interview like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. And then you start to unravel, like you did at your conference, how many teachers are really pushing the envelope to a new level as far as joy and innovation and doing things in a student-centric way to make things enjoyable so that they're enjoying learning and we're enjoying teaching and the learning's happening and the interest in learning is happening. So that's great. I love that you shared those stories with us. And every week that I've talked to somebody new, you see that around the country, you have to look for it, right? We can get isolated in our classrooms and feel like you said, who could ever identify with what we're going through here? And we can get locked in our own doors. There's a world of really cool creatives out there and this new technology landscape. And I had no idea how many were on Twitter and social media actively shouting it out all the time. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really wonderful message. What do you feel like is something that you would want your students to have learned from you when they exit your classroom door at the end of a term or a class? Something that you hope that you've imparted to them?
so the beauty in culinary arts is that it's a life skill, right? So there is a certain percentage of kids that are going to leave my class and pursue a career in culinary or hospitality. But there's a lot of kids who aren't. They may not have dinner on a regular basis with their family. They may not even know that macaroni can be made outside of the craft box, right? And so to be able to teach those life skills and to know that no matter if they are going to be going into a career in the industry or not, they are going to have these skills that they can build on for a lifetime. And I want them to look back 20, 30 years from now, whether they're making dinner for their family or friends, or maybe they are working in the back of the house or the front of the house at a restaurant. I want them to look back on my class and have fond memories of food, and have positive and look back at that as a positive experience, and really learn those employability skills that are needed in any job. And those those skills as far as just being able to relate to people and to socialize and work together as a team and be able to create. And the 4 C's, right? The communication, the critical thinking, the collaboration, and the creativity. Those are essential. And those are things that I'm always trying to incorporate into my classroom on a daily basis, because I feel like those are skills that are truly needed in today's industries, and I believe the jobs of the future as well.
That's outstanding. I love that. I have a background in radio broadcasting. So one of the things I tell them is your ability to speak and write can take you far in any field. Your ability to be
Yes.
nice to people and work with people, even if you disagree with them, is a huge skill and asset to you. So I hope that the kind of life skills that you can get, like you said, in the culinary
Right.
classroom can help you in any profession as well, whether you go out there. So that's fantastic. I wonder if you have some ideas, since you are a specialist in that classroom environment,
Mhm.
about what kind of foods do you go to in particular days or particular moods. So if it's a chilly Medford winter day, what is your go-to? What would you want students to have like in their toolkit? Oh, today would be a great day for.
Oh my goodness. Well, each of my courses was so different. So I taught Culinary 2, which was very topic specific. Like we did yeast breads and we did sauces and pies and pastries and cakes. And then I had another class where it was regional foods. And we were learning about the foods across America. And then one that was international cuisine where we're learning about foods from around the world. And so I think for me, just really being able to teach kids what, if they were to open up the refrigerator or open up their cupboards, to be able to look at those ingredients and be able to put something together and to really be able to make things their own. I think that that was another thing that I learned over the years, was I was always teaching the recipes and always teaching them, which is important for them to be able to read a recipe, but I want them to learn the methods and why things work the way they do and what happens when you activate yeast and what's going on there, and what's the difference between baking powder and baking soda and why are those in the recipe, and what happens when you add too much or too little. And so if they really understand the science behind the cooking and they understand the methods of cooking, they can open up their cupboards and the refrigerator and be able to create their own things. And so I always tried to instill that in my kids, like learn how things work and learn these basic methods, and you can make anything you want, right?
That's great. Yeah. And it makes cooking self-expression, right? Artistic expression of themselves. I remember culinary class in high school. My lab partner mixed up the lowercase t with the capital T on baking powder. So I definitely know what happens when you uppercase that T.
Yeah.
That was not good. But then there's always the one kid who's like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And it's like they found their taste, like, okay, so someone has an affinity for baking powder or an immunity to it.
Yeah.
How about for your own personal taste as far as food? If you were to go to a real treat, a dessert for you, what would be your favorite? Do you have something that calls out to you? Or do you like to see a variety of things?
Well, I definitely love a variety of things. I love bread. So I love teaching yeast breads. I love bread. I love the smell of bread. I love the taste of bread. I love cinnamon rolls and monkey bread and all of that good stuff. It's amazing. I also love ice cream. So we would make homemade ice cream in my class sometimes, and that was really fun. Gosh, I really love food in general, though. You really can't. There's not many foods that I don't like to eat, and I'm always loving to explore new flavors as well. So I'm definitely a foodie.
It's a journey. What do you think is your most favorited recipe by your students in your class? The one they tell you about more than any other?
Oh, you know what? I don't know if this is going to answer your question directly, but what I love is when my students take something that I've taught them, like let's say pie crust, and then they make it completely their own. And so for instance, at the end of every unit, I have a MasterChef challenge. And so I will say, I want you to make a pie crust, but I want you to make it without the recipe. I'm not giving you the recipe. You're going to have to make it from memory, but we're not going to stop there. I want you to make it into something that will blow my mind and blow our judges' mind. And I invite in an authentic audience of judges to judge their food. And the things that they create are absolutely amazing when they realize that, you know what? I don't even need the recipe. We know how to do this. And not only do we know how to do this, but we can make it something completely our own. And then the things that they create is absolutely mind-blowing. I remember one time this group made these s'mores, and they were like pie crust. They cut out their pie crust in these really thin squares, and they encrusted it with like a cinnamon sugar mixture. And they put marshmallows and chocolate ganache on the inside, and they made it in this beautiful like trio on a plate with dipping sauces. It was phenomenal. And all I had them do was make a pie crust and turn it into something amazing, and they did. And so I think that that is the part that I absolutely love as an educator, is when I feel like I can instill them with those skills, and then they can put their own spin on it. And that's when students become empowered as learners and become immersed in learning, when they can truly, they realize, they see that their own skill, and they tap into their own curiosity and creativity.
That's huge. That's so inspiring. It's a good advice for people all over who, whatever you're teaching, don't put a cap on what your students can achieve with a project or with a activity, because they will blow you away if you give them the chance to show you what they're made of. Tisha Richmond, thank you so much for being a guest on Inspiring Teachers. Tell everyone out there where they can find your blog and how they can follow you on social media.
Yes. Well, first of all, it was an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My Twitter handle is TishRich, TishRich. You can find my blog at tisharrichmond.com. I'm also on Instagram at Tish Richmond. And I love sharing and learning from other educators. So I absolutely love to get connected. So please reach out to me at any time.
Thank you so much. For now, it's time to get cooking. We so appreciate you being with us today, and we'll see you on the next edition of Inspiring Teachers. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can find all of our past episodes as well. This is Danny Hogger saying thanks for watching, and class is dismissed.